Ohio's unemployment rate is lower than it was before the spike from the pandemic. Help wanted and now hiring signs are common sights, especially at restaurants and retailers. And some businesses are actively advertising they'll pay well over Ohio's minimum wage of $8.80, along with signing bonuses. So why aren't they finding workers? Statehouse correspondent Jo Ingles looked into that.
Brendan Joyce worked in a Cleveland area restaurant before he was laid off last spring.
So yeah, I'm never going to go back to work in restaurants. I'm never going to go back to work in the restaurant industry here. And I think it's disgusting and offensive that anyone would expect restaurant workers to do after the way that they've been treated for the last year. Also, the rudeness from customers and aggressiveness and offensiveness about wearing masks that I've heard from people I worked with, on top of literally being exposed to a pandemic simply so people could get drunk or eat an expensive meal, it's deeply offensive.
Joyce had to wait weeks to get unemployment because the system to pay him and other people who didn't qualify for traditional jobless benefits had to be built from the ground up. Then his checks were held for weeks before they were released to him because the state was investigating thousands of fraudulent claims. Joyce is now attending a university to change his career. Restaurants throughout Ohio report being short-staffed. So are retail stores. Some are paying well above minimum wage and even giving signing bonuses. Cedar Point and Kings Island are paying up to $20 an hour for some positions and cutting hours of operation because they cannot get enough workers. And Republicans are blaming the $300 a week federal subsidy being paid to unemployed Ohioans for holding back economic growth.
And it's having an impact and it's slowing that recovery down. The federal assistance, that extra $300 a week in federal pandemic unemployment compensation is, in some cases, certainly discouraging people from going back at this point in time. The assistance was always intended to be temporary.
I talked with an employer who discussed this potential policy change of the $300 bonus, and he said that would help him justify expanding manufacturing in Ohio versus another state that they're considering. These are very real decisions that employers are making. You cannot create a job until you have somebody who's willing to take a job.
Next week, Ohio and 7 other states will stop sending those $300 checks to unemployed workers. 12 states have already ended those benefits, and another 5 states will stop the checks in the next 2 weeks. Nearly all are led by Republicans. The federal program for the 25 states that will continue to participate expires on Labor Day. The new leader of the Ohio Chamber of Commerce, Republican former Congressman Steve Stivers, agrees with DeWine about ending those benefits.
And part of the problem is we're paying people to sit on the couch $300 a week, plus the regular unemployment benefits. That's the equivalent of a $45,000 a year job. That's a problem.
But some workers say that's simply not the case. Isabel Alvarado of Columbus says she couldn't go back to her job because she didn't have child care.
I was working remotely, and then the office requested me to return to work, but I couldn't find daycare within the time frame that they gave me, so I basically lost my job.
When much of the state shut down last spring, Rita Halliveld's daughter lost her child care at a Montessori preschool.
In order to meet the requirements for COVID precautions, they had to cut their early childhood program by 60%. That was the exact number they told me. And so they closed their toddler preschool and had fewer spaces open. And at that point, it was only going to be like academic year stuff anyway. So I was already in a position of having to search for childcare for the summer in order to be able to continue working.
Halliveld says she's been able to get some pandemic unemployment assistance throughout the year, and she's just recently found childcare. But she's a self-employed social worker, so now she has to build her client base back up. So it could be tough for a while. And while the state says everyone who wants to get vaccinated can, more than half of the state's population has not. Some workers tell me they're afraid of going back to work in closed spaces without a mask mandate because they have health conditions that could put them at greater risk if they should get COVID. Jo Ingles, Statehouse News Bureau.